Walter Collins Jr. was born September of 1918 to parents Christine Dunn and Walter Joseph Anson. At the time that Walter Jr.'s parents met, Walter Anson was an ex-convict that went by the name of Walter J. Collins. Christine had no knowledge of this at the time of dating him and marrying him, so her name legally changed to Christine Collins. Not long after little Walter was born, his father went to prison at Folsom State Prison for robbery, which left Christine Collins to raise her son on her own. As little Walter was growing up, he was known for being a sweet but shy boy, and ultimately a very well-behaved child. Christine had a hard time at first raising a child by herself, but she eventually became a telephone operator to support her and her son, and she never gave up on her responsibilities. It was March 10th of 1928. At the age of 9, Walter decided he wanted to go to the movies one day. His mother okayed the trip and gave him the money for the movie. Walter Collins left the house and went on his way to the movies in the Mount Washington neighborhood of Los Angeles. As the day went on, Walter had not yet returned in the time that Christine imagined he would be back. So concern grew as the day turned into evening. Christine went around the neighborhood to ask if anyone had seen Walter, but at the time, no one had. Christine ultimately reported Walter missing 5 days later. After the search began for Walter, the case made nationwide attention. There were also neighbors that knew Walter that provided information to the police as well. One of the neighbors stated that a few days prior to Walter's disappearance, there was an Italian man and a woman that were asking for Walter's address. There was also another neighbor that stated that they saw Walter in a vehicle on the day that he went missing, with 2 people begging to be released from the car. There were many different leads that came from various different places, but the leads that the police received all reached dead ends. The Los Angeles police were already growing a not-so-great reputation, and due to a previous case not too much earlier than Walter's case involving a young girl named Marion Parker, who was kidnapped and tragically murdered, the public pressured the police heavily to solve the case. But that would change 5 months later, when the police announced that Walter Collins had been found. The excitement of the public was massive, but not as massive as the excitement that Christine had for her son to finally come home. But when the boy was brought to her, Christine immediately knew it was not her son. Captain J.J. Jones was over the case the whole time, and when bringing the boy to Christine and her saying that they had the wrong boy, Jones tried to convince Christine that it was her son and that he had been through so much that he could have possibly looked different. Although Christine still had her doubts, they suggested that she take him home, in which she did. When doing so, she tried her best to treat the boy as her son, but there was nothing about the boy that she could find to be her son. After receiving backlash from the police, when trying to reason with them, she decided to take matters into her own hands and had Walter's dental history matched with the boy, and it was not a match. Also, the boy was 3 inches shorter than Walter. Christine knew this because every day, when Walter woke, she would mark his height on the wall to see how much taller he was getting. When Christine's actions were discovered by Jones, he immediately scolded her, stating that she was trying to renege on her responsibilities as a mother and trying to get the state to take care of her son, and ultimately said that she was a cruel-hearted woman and a fool. Afterwards, the police had Christine Collins committed to the Los Angeles General Hospital psychiatric ward, giving the impression that she was mentally ill. Christine had experienced terrible things while she was in there, but while she was still committed, it was revealed by the boy to the police that he actually was not Walter Collins, but in reality, it was a boy named Arthur Hutchins, a runaway from Iowa. He confessed that he ran away from home and lied because he wanted to go to Los Angeles. He also admitted that he was not 9, but 12. When learning this information, Christine was released 10 days later. Christine sued J.J. Jones for all that she had been through, and Jones was suspended. But even with that, she still didn't know where her son was. As the years went by, Christine tried her best to cope with her son not being home, although she never gave up hope. But during this time, she had no idea that there was something tragic going on in Wineville, California. Gordon Stewart Northcott was a Canadian man that moved to California with his parents in 1924. He was living on a chicken farm with his mother and his nephew, Sanford Clark, that he had brought to live with him 2 years prior. It was when Clark's sister went to visit her brother at the chicken farm is when she realized that there was something terrible going on, based on his body language when it came to their uncle. She returned home and immediately told her mother about how strange things were at the farm, and her mother didn't hesitate to contact the police. When authorities were notified, they went to visit the location. Northcott found out and instructed the nephew to stall them. This is when he and his mother had fled, but they were captured not long after in British Columbia by the help of Clark. When speaking with the police, Clark confessed that Northcott had been kidnapping young boys and ultimately killing them after torturing them in a chicken coop. He stated that there were at least 20 bodies that were buried on the farm, but that there were many more, and he didn't remember them all. He also confessed that he did know the Walter Collins boy, and that he was among the boys that had been murdered on the farm. Sarah Northcott, Gordon's mother, confessed to being the one who took the life of Walter. But ultimately, Gordon Northcott was found guilty and was sentenced to death by hanging. Before his execution date, Christine Collins visited Northcott, where he ultimately confessed to her that he and his mother had actually not been the ones that took the life of Walter Collins. He stated that he had become a born-again Christian, and that due to the execution date growing near, he didn't want to lie. Although she couldn't confirm that he was telling the truth, she decided to believe him so that she could hold on to hope that Walter could still be alive. Especially due to the authorities finding something that appeared to possibly be a bone of Walter's, but they were unable to confirm all remains from him. Northcott was hung on October 2nd, 1930. Christine never gave up hope, but sadly died without ever knowing what really happened to her son.